Good day. My name is John Beattie, and I am a principal consultant at Sungard Availability Services. I will be speaking to you today about the business implications of an infectious disease outbreak. If at any time during our discussion today you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat window. Additionally, all attendees will be receiving a follow-up email after the session with further information about how to follow up with us on this important topic. Please note that this presentation was pre-recorded on February 28, 2020. We are finding that many senior executives are asking if their organizations are ready for a coronavirus outbreak, and the answers they are getting sometimes are dependent on who is asked. And in many cases, the answers are based on false perceptions or a general lack of understanding about all of the factors that need to be considered for true infectious disease preparedness. I hope that as a result of this session, you either confirm or expand your thinking on this important and current topic. Today, we will cover 4 discussion areas: the case for readiness and awareness, what are some of the good practices that you should be considering with regard to your programs and to your business, what are some immediate recommendations that we have for you, and some examples of how Sungard has actually helped organizations prepare for an infectious disease outbreak. So let's talk about the case for why you need to take action and why you need to be prepared. You know, as we see in the news on a daily basis, hourly basis, the coronavirus situation, the COVID-19, is continuing to escalate, as you can see in that curve on the right. In the past 2 weeks, there's been a large increase in the number of countries that are experiencing experiencing outbreaks. I do suggest that all organizations pay particular attention to the World Health Organization's website. The link to that is at the bottom because they do post important updates on a daily basis, and it's important to stay on top of that. So according to the World Health Organization, we are, I guess, in an epidemic situation. They have not yet begun to use the term pandemic, although arguably we are in a pandemic situation, but there is reluctance on their behalf to declare that. And as a result of their not wanting to use the pandemic word yet, many organizations are not taking it as seriously as they probably should, and are not necessarily paying close attention to this situation. We certainly recommend that organizations consider this to be something that is going to impact them, and in the very near term. So again, on a day-to-day basis, this current state of affairs will continue to unravel, and again suggest that you, if you haven't already invested in being prepared, that you do so immediately. One of the key elements of preparing for an infectious disease outbreak is thinking about your people and your workplaces, your facilities, because if they are at risk, then obviously your business is at risk. And many organizations focus on this area and this area only. It is, most organizations do anticipate that, people will be unavailable, that performance might be impacted by a variety of factors as you see here, and that clearly is to be expected. But beyond that, organizations need to be thinking about changes in demand for their services and products. People may be buying more or less of those services under the, as infectious disease outbreaks materialize. Best example of that is, Apple has closed all of their stores in China. So if you want to buy a new laptop or you want to buy a new iPhone or what have you, you cannot go into a store and buy one. But you may experience an increase in online sales. So people might be buying your products, but doing so online. So their behaviors have changed. They still want your products and services, but they're going about acquiring them in a different way. Supply chain disruptions, we hear about that constantly. Many organizations are faced with that rely on products or raw materials coming out of China are certainly experiencing issues, with that, and that's starting to escalate beyond China into other areas, particularly in Asia. So there are major supply chain disruptions for automotive parts, even for drugs. There's disruptions on raw materials that are needed in order to manufacture drugs in other countries. So therefore, all organizations need to be prepared for a variety of things that you see in that gray box on the right-hand side. Providing personnel with a safe workplace. There are certainly people who must be in the workplace. They cannot work remotely. And we need to make sure that those people who are expected to be in our work facilities feel comfortable being in those work facilities. So we need to do everything we can to minimize the social interaction that they have. If there are folks who can work remotely, move them out so that there's less people to interact with in the offices. I worked with organizations in the past on doing things from shutting down access IDs so that people can physically not get in the building. So if they swipe their badge to get into a facility, it simply won't work because we expect them to work from home and we do not want them in the office. Again, trying to create a safe workplace for the folks who need to be in our facilities. We do need to prepare for the unavailability of personnel. That's something that's very often addressed, but obviously it's going to happen. We have to anticipate that people who are working may have decreased concentration performance. They may be prone to more errors and accidents. So we have to anticipate that and understand that that's going to possibly happen. So we may have a reduced workforce and we may have a more error-prone workforce. Obviously, the unavailability of workplace, can happen. Potentially not so much with coronavirus, but with other types of infectious disease, I may be forced by health agencies to shut down a work area or a facility. We saw that happening with the Ebola outbreak, several years ago. If someone was diagnosed with Ebola, their workplace and their homes were quarantined, and others could not even enter the area. So in the broader case of infectious disease preparedness, it's important to think about the possibility of having to shut down a workplace in its entirety for a few days until you get approval to reopen it. Very important, keeping people informed as to what's going on. People need to understand that you have their back, that you are, they need to understand how you're going to communicate with them. So if you do decide to invoke business continuity plans or strategies, and you're going to be asking people to work from home, how will they be notified of that? How will they be notified that you're closing a facility? So it's important that people be kept informed, and it's also important they understand how you will keep them informed. And of course, as we discussed, you need to be prepared for those changes in business dynamics that could easily happen. Changes in customer behavior, unavailability of raw materials, especially coming out of infected areas, and that the demand for your products and services may shift in some cases to the positive, some to the negative. I want to kind of share a diagram here that shows Sungard's point of view on the broad topic of business resilience, and also we'll be addressing how infectious disease management fits into this model or this ecosystem. This pyramid that you see is for a commercial bank, which many of us can relate to. They have a mission of providing exceptional service to their customers. They have a variety of products and services that that they offer to their customers. There are a variety of activities that are both directly in support of those products and services, as well as that are more administrative and in nature. So branch operations, lending, those directly support the products and services. Finance, cybersecurity, and many others are kind of in the background, but do need to happen in an organization. And all of those activities depend upon a variety of resources. They depend on workplaces or facilities. They depend on people. They depend on third-party products and services. They depend on IT services, application systems, network services, and of course they depend on data being available. And I enter into a problem situation when any of those resources are disrupted in some way. So if my IT systems go down, that's going to impact my activities, my products and services, and potentially my overall mission of my organization. Same for workplace, workforce, third-party products and services. If I take away any of those resources or take away multiple of those resources, that's where our business continuity plans, tend to fit in. But on a broader scale, there's a variety of plans and processes that do need to be in place within an organization in order to address those types of issues. So you can see here that there's a variety of plans and processes that are identified. We won't go into all of those during this session, but infectious disease management is clearly a part of that, and it is very much workforce focused, but there's clearly an element of it that operates at the mission level as well, and you need to have that business perspective as well. And we're going to talk about that further during this discussion. So it's important to note that infectious disease management is part of the overall business resilience ecosystem. Okay, let's talk about some good practices that we believe are important for organizations to undertake. Certainly establishing a quick reference guide, relative to infectious disease management overall. And these types of guidelines should not just be focused on coronavirus or pandemics. They need to focus on a variety of different types of situations that could arise impacting the organization. About 2 years ago, I had a client that used their infectious disease management plan for a bed bug outbreak that impacted their New York City offices. Having the plan, they were able to take quick action and not have to, think too much about it. They knew how to deal with any kind of disruption in the workplace. This was a situation that impacted some of their workforce. It impacted their facility. They had to close the facility down, and there were medical issues related to it. What's interesting about the situation is that it happened several times over the course of several weeks. So it did become a problem before it resolved and before they finally figured out who the culprit was that was bringing in the bed bugs. But the point being is that their infectious disease management plan worked well in that situation. So these plans need to be flexible enough to address any health threat or infectious disease outbreak that might impact the business. So they should not be, the plans need to be focused on, on your people and your workplaces, but as we'll see, they need to, in our discussion today, they need to go well beyond that. Okay, looking at elements of an infectious disease management plan, there's obviously, roles that need to be defined. So there's a variety of people with a variety of skill sets that all are involved and all are going to be participating and dealing with these situations in some special way. As you can see on the left, I believe there's 11 different roles there. It typically varies to some degree, based on organization. Very important is there needs to be someone in charge. There needs to be a response leader for the organization, and typically it's a fairly high-ranking, executive. You need to have other roles defined as well, along with detailed responsibilities. And those responsibilities are going to differ based on which phase of the infectious disease management life cycle depicted on the right that you're in. So the monitor phase is focused on, we're just going to keep an eye on things, it's flu season coming up. So there's someone that's typically in charge of paying attention to what might be happening, in the world. Is there an Ebola outbreak again? Is there, any kind of communicable disease that might be, surfacing? And we tend to stay in that mode the majority of, any given year, where there's somebody that's just kind of keeping an eye on stuff. The alert phase is when, things are happening. People are getting sick. There's something that is happening, and many organizations worldwide are in the alert phase, and the control phase is where we have been directly impacted. So many parts of the world are also currently in the control, would be in the control phase, particularly in Asia, where outbreaks are extensive, and that's really focused on mitigating what's happening to our organization, responding to it, recovering from it, and that includes closing stores if you're Apple. So things like that are happening around the world. So the alert phase, every organization globally should be in that particular phase right now. They should be prepared and educated and ready to jump into control mode as the virus begins to impact them, specifically. So a little more detail on this to kind of break it down is, we did mention earlier that there's various activities that need to be defined, and those, and responsibilities across the different roles, and we are, for each of those roles, there are responsibilities in the monitor phase, the alert phase, the control phase, and typically there's anywhere from 40 to 80 different activities that make sense for an organization, and that's dealing on the people side as well as on the business side. Those activities need to be, identified and assigned to people, and of course communicated to them so they understand what's expected of them. Then typically there's more detail. So as you can see here, here's a breakdown of one of the activities into more detailed actions. So the monthly monitoring of health organization websites is further broken down, as you can see in the action section in that table, below. So every major activity that's assigned to a role needs to be addressed in detail. You can see also in this diagram that facilities management during the alert phase is escalating common area cleaning regime. So they're doing more, they're using stronger chemicals, and they're doing it more often. And again, the details in your plan would then identify what specifically is happening, who's going to accelerate the cleaning, things like that. So again, getting down to details is important, and thinking through it, better to do it in advance than reacting, at time of need. So organizations of all types, kind of a little bit of a recap for the moment, and some new ideas too. They need to provide their workforce with a safe workplace. People need to feel like you have their back and that they're going to be safe when they come in. So only essential personnel are allowed in the workplace, and you're taking precautions to make them feel comfortable and safe and working in as clean an environment as possible. We did talk about changes in business dynamics, about the unavailability of personnel, but there's two more topics here that are kind of new. First is accelerating work to ease pressure that may arise once impacts are realized. So if I do anticipate that I'm going to be losing products coming in through my supply chain, or I'm going to be losing personnel to do work, in the early phases of an outbreak, I might actually accelerate production. I may order additional raw materials, get them into my facilities, and accept the carrying costs for those additional products, so that I can continue to manufacture if my supply chain is disrupted. And the same thing for people. If I have folks that are doing stuff day to day, I may ask them to work overtime, to work a little bit extra, to get ahead on their commitments to our customers or clients, so that when we do experience a reduction in available workforce, that I'm not going to be missing commitments to my customers. Many times customers, clients are happy when you do something sooner than committed, and they're usually happier about that than you not meeting your commitments at all. IT advanced preparation is another area that we strongly advocate organizations take a strong look at, and that is really related to a variety of factors that we're going to discuss on the slide, on the next slide here. So IT needs to be, IT, like any other department, depends on, they have a dependency on people, they have a dependency on workplace, they have a dependency on systems that support their day-to-day operations. They may have dependencies on third parties. And so therefore, business continuity plans are important to create across the IT organization, but in particular, security operations, tech ops, and user support. We need to make sure that we can continue to manage incidents and problems as our people in IT are impacted by an infectious disease, outbreak. We also need to anticipate and plan for changes in internal and external customer behavior. So, there may be more calls to the help desk in response to personnel working remotely. We may have more network traffic as our clients switch from person-to-person interaction to online services. There may be more demand for some services and less for others within IT. So it's important for us to consider what's happening to our IT organizations as well, because demand for their services may well vary in an infectious disease outbreak situation. Okay, similar to business continuity, exercises apply here too. So you develop your information, your infectious disease management plan, and you do need to conduct your tabletops to assure understanding. You may ask your people to truly work remotely for several concurrent days to validate that they can do so. And it's typically recommended that you, as part of an exercise, that you eventually get to the point where you validate that at least 50% of a department's workforce can work remotely for 3 concurrent days. And the reason we recommend 3 concurrent days is that if folks are working from home for a day, if there's a system they can't access or something they can't do remotely, they're just going to put it off and take care of it tomorrow. So if you have folks work for 3 consecutive days or more, you're more likely to find the small gotchas that could potentially pose a problem. Certainly, it's important to rehearse on your communication mechanisms. You need people to understand how they're going to be communicated with regularly and how they're going to be communicated with regard to urgent messages. So you need to have mechanisms for both of those. And one thing we do find is, while conducting exercises, sometimes people are reluctant to even open a urgent message because they may not used to be seeing the format of them. They may not be used to getting a text from the company. So they may tend to believe that those are phishing activities, and they may simply ignore them. So it's important to make sure that people are well-versed in how you will be communicating with them, again, both for routine updates as well as for urgent messages that could happen at any time of the day or week. Obviously important to refresh and update your business continuity plans to make sure that they are current and can be leveraged should that be necessary as a result of an infectious disease outbreak. Okay, so immediate recommendations. Obviously, what to do now, define and document your game plan, whether that be at a detailed level or a high level. Make sure you understand how you're going to be responding to changes in customer behavior, a reduction in your available workforce, changes in your supply chain, changes in, the many changes that can result, from this, both for the people, workplace, and business elements of your organization. Communicate to your personnel and maybe even some of your key customers. What we are seeing is that many organizations are asking their third-party suppliers and vendors about their infectious disease plans, or pandemic plans in some cases they call them, and making sure that they feel comfortable that their third parties are going to be able to withstand a coronavirus outbreak. Reevaluate your need for business travel. Your travelers will appreciate it. Obviously, monitor the changing state of COVID-19 outbreaks and do that daily or even more often. And then obviously take necessary action immediately as your geographies, your markets, your supply chain, what have you, are all impacted by this current situation. Okay, a little insight on some things that we have done with clients, in the past. This is something, kind of a quick overview of something we recently did for a client organization. We helped to develop an infectious disease management guide. It was done at a fairly high level. They wanted to get the basics in place. So we developed this guideline. We created an awareness presentation, and we conducted a stakeholder awareness session. We did that over 2 consecutive days, and as you can see from the schedule below, day 1 we conducted 2 workshops. One was more, people and workplace focused. The second workshop was more operationally focused, dealing with those changes in business dynamics, changes in customer demand. And then the very next day, we conducted an awareness session, and they continued to fill in some of the blanks and to conduct a broader education around their infectious disease guideline. In other occasions, we've dealt with facility access control plans. How do I keep people out? How do I keep people feeling safe that when they're in the workplace? With one organization in the global organization, but for their New York location, we worked with building management to reprogram, establish a protocol for reprogramming elevators so that their people would not be on the same elevator as someone from another company that was in the same building. So that organization had a dedicated set of elevators in a high-rise tower, and because they wanted to make sure that their personnel that had to be in the workplace would not be interacting unnecessarily with other folks from their company as well as other folks from other organizations. The business acceleration strategies, we mentioned that before. What work can I get ahead on? What can I do in advance so that if I do have experience of disruption, I can deal with it? And working through those plans and strategies has been something that we have worked with several organizations on very recently. Extensive work, establishing the exercises and facilitating those various kinds of exercises to make sure that executives were going to be comfortable that if their people did have to work from home, where they had to invoke any of the other strategies like business acceleration, that they were comfortable that people understood what was expected and they actually rehearsed doing it. And then, of course, developing business continuity plans, something we certainly do, for many organizations, but also developing those for the IT functions so that if they are disrupted, they know how to respond to infectious disease outbreaks as well as any other kind of disruption that might impact their ability to do their job. So just wanted to wrap up here and say, first of all, thank you for your time today. Thank you for listening. I hope you found it valuable. Please feel free to contact me directly, and you will be receiving an email after this session that will invite you to post questions and to contact us and to get further information. So thank you very, very much for your time today, and have a wonderful day.